Melinda pushed into her driveway feeling vindicated. She could be a good mom, right? The kids were dropped off at school. She had even gone into the office to pay off the lunch money account. This time she put $100 on the account in the hopes that it would last more than a week. The receptionist, Terry, had smiled at her sympathetically. She knew how hard it was to organize a family of 3 kids. Maybe working at the school and seeing all the parents struggle was the reason Terry didn't have any children. She accrued more good mom cred by going to Costco. They'd eat most of their weekend meals at the festival, but she picked up enough prepared foods to get them through the next week. The children loved what they called heater meals, much better than Melinda's attempts at cooking. She really did try, but most things ended up getting either raw or burnt. Food was just not interesting enough to catch her attention for long. Tom and Tyler were good about making their own dinners, and these meals she bought were large enough to feed Melinda and Liz as well. Now she had 5 whole hours in her studio, all to herself. It really was time to get started on the seniors' Christmas auction. Though Melinda hated to get together to talk and eat, the seniors at St. Tim's seemed to love it. The least she could do was help fund the fun of people who did so much for the church. Melinda felt guilty during the Time, Talent, and Treasure lecture delivered each year. Oh, Father Bear tried to disguise it as a homily after the gospel, but Melinda knew it was aimed squarely at people like her, who really would rather be anywhere but volunteering or in another church meeting. She got out of the obligation by doing art for the church and school. Decorations for the dinner dance? I'll paint the decorations. School play? I'll do the backdrops. She aimed to do one piece of work for the church a quarter, kind of like paying dues or taxes. It helped stave off the guilty feelings. It even made her feel good. Why, this afternoon, she'd go up and decorate the chalkboard for the wine garden at the Oktoberfest. Rather than take the bus home, she told the boys to pick up Liz and meet her on the hill. Melinda parked the car in the driveway, walked around the house, and entered her studio. The standalone structure was the reason she bought the house 6 years ago. After her husband left her pregnant and with 2 children, Melinda had been devastated. Though her art had been selling well, she had no steady job to support the family. The office positions she had interviewed for were so depressing. Who wanted to spend their whole life under fluorescent lights pushing papers around? Her parents helped her find the tiny house with a large outbuilding out in the country, and had co-signed the loan. 6 years later, the house was still hers, and the family had found a community at St. Tim's Church and School. The studio had been almost uninhabitable the first year, drafty and a better home for mice than her paints. Now it was insulated and much more livable. She still had to keep her paints near a space heater in winter so they would not be too viscous, but that was a small price to pay for a space all her own. Her paints hadn't frozen since the first winter took her by surprise. For 2 years, Melinda kept all her paints in boxes, so she could carry them back to the house when she finished work. 2-year-old Liz had been ecstatic one January evening to find one of her boxes left on the floor. Melinda should have realized what was happening when she didn't hear from the toddler for 45 whole minutes. The living room would never be the same. At least it was better than painting the walls with the contents of your diaper like Tom did at their old house. Melinda gathered up a sketchbook and a few pencils and went to sit out on the small concrete landing. The air was warm and the sun pleasant on her back. Her contentment was only marred by the barking of the neighbor's husky. The 9-month-old pup hated to be left alone. She walked across the backyard to pet him through the chain link of his kennel. Back to the seniors and their troublesome project. The Pope had declared 2016 to be a year of mercy. The organizers of the luncheon asked her to paint a picture about mercy. Talk about an abstract concept. It was why she had put off beginning for so long. All the preliminary sketches made no sense, even to her, and she was the one who drew them. One of the problems was her audience, she knew. They loved the old pious pictures, like the Divine Mercy painting. It showed a sweet, sorrowful Jesus, touching his heart with blue and red rays of light coming down from it. Not her style at all. She did like painting the light. It was the too sweet expression on Jesus' face that got to her. Melinda's work tended to be more abstract and vibrant, sunbursts of radiant light capturing the glory of God she saw in the world all around her. The dog-sized puppy licked her fingers gratefully. He placed a paw on her hand as if to hold her in place. The gesture reminded her of something. As she stroked his ruff, she let her mind drift to capture the wispy thought. What did he remind her of? It was that book, the one her parents had bribed her to read in the 6th grade. The book was old, a 1920s edition of The Flowers of St. Francis. She knew her mom chose the book for the exquisite woodcut prints. The deal was straightforward. If she read the book, then told her parents the story of the chapter, she could use the set of 48 Pigma drawing pencils for the evening. Her parents promised to give her the set when she finished the book. The spring grass green pencil, PC 913, her favorite that year, had been worn down to a stub by the time she finally earned the set. Melinda wondered if her parents ever figured out that she bribed her brother with hoarded Easter candy to read it for her. Later she felt guilty, and went back to read the book. She fell in love with the old-fashioned woodcuts. Her favorite had been The Wolf of Gubbio. The woodcut was from the end of the story, after Francis had talked the wolf out of preying on the frightened townsfolk. In the print, St. Francis was bent toward the wolf, hand extended. The wolf placed his paw in the saint's hand. It was just like this dog. Both had the sharp teeth, but friendly paws and tail. They just wanted to be friends. The first week she had been so afraid of the poor thing. How silly. Actually, the Wolf of Gubbio was a great example of mercy. The wolf took mercy on the local people, and they fed him for the rest of his life. One kindness breeding another. This would be a great subject for her painting. Instead of the saint, why not paint the wolf, redeemed? Closing her eyes, Melinda began to consciously relax the bonds that held her mind tight. She imagined her mind as a fist, then slowly uncurled one mental finger at a time. When she opened them again, she saw the world in a completely new way, as the vibrant, incredible place it surely was. She thought of it as seeing the world as God did, each creation loved and special. The puppy went from cute to amazing. She could see his need to please, his desire for attachment with one special person, the instinctual drive to run and hunt. This complex, beautiful creature would make a fine subject for her painting. She pulled her hand back through, leaned onto the fence, and began to sketch.